Just a very, very special Sunday morning here together. As you know, each year we have our Charley Horwitz Memorial Platform, and we are really excited this Sunday to be able to welcome one of my own kind of personal heroes over the years, Mr. Eddie Ellis, who's the director of the Center for NuLeadership. And we're going to hear from Eddie Ellis in a little bit about some really critical issues that confront us. And as we think about what it means to be an ethical culture society in the 21st century, Eddie Ellis is going to have some really important things to talk to us about in terms of how we understand the full complement of our humanity together. Each week, we light candles of understanding against the shadows of our times. This, for us, is a sign of standing together with people who have sought goodness, sometimes at great risk. Note, as I was preparing, one of the things I saw on the website of the Center for NuLeadership that Eddie Ellis is the director of is something that I thought really spoke to sort of us in ethical culture, and I wanted to just offer that to you. Often in ethical culture, as you know, we say we work to bring out the best in others in order to bring out the best in ourselves. And on the Center for NuLeadership website, they quote a wise African proverb that says, "If you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go further, go together." So here we are getting a chance to go together. We don't know where we're going to go together, but if we go together, we know it'll be good when we get there. So just really appreciate that. So for our gathering activity now, I'd like you to turn to one of your neighbors, and we'll take a couple of minutes to this. I want you to prioritize a couple of ideas about what do you think we need to change about the prison system. So take a few minutes, turn to each other, have that conversation. We'll hear from the room, and then we'll get going. Okay. It wasn't the 2 years that we needed, I granted you. Okay, so maybe we can just take a moment and hear just some of your thinking and reflections on what do we need to change about the prison system. Yes, please, go ahead.
Drug laws, but laws in general, to think about what we value and don't value.
We have a lot of really wonderful people who come and play music here, who keep the spirit alive and help us to lift our hearts when the days are tough, and Bev Grant is one of them. Eddie Ellis is a person who has been in the struggle to reclaim sort of the human rights and human dignity of incarcerated persons for many years. He's the executive director of the Center for New Leadership for Urban Solutions in Brooklyn, an independent think tank founded and developed by formerly incarcerated professionals working to create a new paradigm, and we heard some of that today, for achieving human justice. They work for, and they have sort of three main pillars of their work, which I'm sure Eddie will go into in some ways: system reform, community empowerment, and individual transformation. As I like to say, we cannot incarcerate ourselves out of this problem. Eddie Ellis is also the host of On the Count, and those of you who haven't listened to On the Count on Saturday on WBAI, it is an excellent program. It is one of the only programs in public affairs radio in the United States exclusively produced and hosted by men and women who were formerly incarcerated as juveniles or adults. And I think the important thing to say here is that Eddie has done a lot of work over the years with many task forces around many of the issues that we've raised here. He's worked with the New York State Black and Puerto Rican Legislative Caucus, with the Veer Institute for Justice, the Soros Foundation, the Open Society Institute. He's received many awards and gotten a master's degree in theology, all of that, right? But I think to me the most important thing, to say, is as they say each week on the Count program, he likes to say, stand tall in spite of it all and stay on the count. And so we're on the count this morning here, and with that, let's give a good Brooklyn welcome to Eddie Ellis.
I appreciate and am honored and quite frankly humbled to have been asked to speak this morning. My voice is a little hoarse, and one of my vocal cords is not working 100%, so sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. I'm not sure how that goes, but I'm going to do the best I can here this morning, and it is indeed a real honor and privilege to get an opportunity to address you, to talk a little about the work that we do and why we do that work. I was the title of my talk is From Criminal Justice to Human Justice, and it is a generic title which explains all the journey that the Center for New Leadership has taken. But as I was sitting in the audience this morning and I was listening, it occurred to me that in addition to the social and political journey that we take, that there is also a concurrent spiritual journey. And that spiritual journey perhaps is, for me at least this morning, was best exemplified by the wonderful song that Bev Grant did, Something Inside So Strong. Powerful, powerful, powerful song, but very, very deeply moving and very spiritual. And it sort of connected me to this body, to the work that you do. And it is especially pleasing to have been asked to speak today on the memorial platform for Charlie Horowitz. Charlie Horowitz and I probably shared, although he was in Mississippi, I was in Alabama for Freedom's Summer in Lowndes County. That's another whole story. I won't go into all of that. But that experience in Lowndes County certainly, in terms of community organizing, prepared me to do much of the work that I currently do, and provided, I think, the foundation, the underpinnings of that work. I am the president, actually, of the Center for New Leadership. I was formerly the executive director, and we did administrative reshuffle. I'm the president of the Center for New Leadership on Urban Solutions. Dr. Divine Pryor, who's not here this morning, is the executive director. And I just like to acknowledge that with me also this morning is Young G. Ree, we call her KJ. She is the director of our Institute for Juvenile Justice Reform and Advocacy. Could you just stand up 1 minute, please? Thank you very much. I should also say she's our chief of operations, so most of what happens at the Center for New Leadership is as a result both of her hard work and her leadership. And she is the person that, quite frankly, makes it all happen. I would not be here this morning but for her. So thank you very much, KJ. Center for New Leadership is a public policy research, advocacy, and training center that was established by men and women who were formerly incarcerated to, as Mumia Abu-Jamal would say, to give voice to the voiceless, to provide a platform or vehicle through which men and women who were incarcerated or who were formerly incarcerated and their friends and their families and their allies would have an opportunity to articulate their ideas, their thoughts, their feelings, their recommendations, but most importantly, to have an opportunity to articulate their experience and to use that experience as the basis for analysis about a system that we pretty much all agree does not work, will not work, cannot work, is broken beyond repair, it needs to be totally deconstructed. And that point of view, that particular analysis, I think is missing in the discussion around so-called criminal justice issues. In fact, we don't even use the term criminal justice much anymore. We moved from criminal justice to human justice, but we stopped using the term criminal justice because, number one, it's oxymoronic, or the idea that there is criminal and there's justice and somehow or other one informs the other is absolutely ludicrous. It's like, it's not only is it ludicrous, but in terms of language, which is very, very important, it conveys the wrong kind of impression. It conveys the impression that within this system, somehow or other, there is some degree of justice for people who are accused of committing crimes. And that just absolutely is not true. The missing ingredient in the criminal justice system is justice. And I remember very vividly that in terms of this system, when we talk about the system, we often talk about the system as being broken and not working properly and needing to be reformed. And I do not believe, and neither does the Center for New Leadership, that the system, in fact, can be reformed. It is beyond repair. It's beyond reform. However, there's a parallel system. And that parallel system we call the prison industrial complex. And oftentimes people use the terms interchangeably. Prison industrial complex when they're talking about the criminal justice system, and criminal justice system when they're talking about the prison industrial complex. And the prison industrial complex is working well. It's alive and well. It's about commerce. It's about profit. It's about private prisons. It's about the coming together of government and law enforcement and the academic community and the corporate community to use this so-called justice system as an engine that drives profit. That system is alive and well and working as it was specifically designed. So we've got to be really very clear in terms of our analysis when we look at these systems and we think about where it is we can make the greatest impact and how do we begin deconstructing a system that we know is failing all of us all the time. Greg asked this morning about ways in which the system could be changed. And interestingly enough, all of the suggestions that were made were suggestions that fit very neatly into and have been major considerations of the Center for New Leadership as we move forward. The idea of eliminating solitary confinement, the idea that the state needs to take responsibility for people in prison, the whole question of cost and cost containment, the idea that people who have substance abuse issues should be treated in a public health context rather than a prison or criminal justice or criminal punishment context, that we should be moving from punishment to treatment. The fact that one of the features, one of the major elements that's missing in the criminal justice system is in fact restorative justice. The idea that the system has become the new Jim Crow, as Michelle Alexander has said, that it has become a surrogate for race-based discrimination. It has become a way in which to alter, I think, much of the gains that initially had been made throughout the civil rights period that Greg spoke so eloquently about and that Charlie Horowitz worked so diligently to bring about. So we've got all of these problems that exist, and they exist not in a vacuum, but they exist as a living and a breathing reality. On an everyday basis, there are more people incarcerated in the United States than all of the industrial countries in the world. And that reality impacts in ways that we have yet to imagine, in terms of family, in terms of community, in terms of relationships, in terms of children, in terms of education, in terms of labor market, and 1,000 other ways that this system has deteriorated from the inside. The very core and the very values that America was founded on and that we trump all over the world. This prison industrial complex has become so insidious that it has swallowed up whole communities, and in the process has destroyed both the economic, the political, and the moral fabric of those communities. So we're at a crossroads. We're at a time when there is much that needs to be done, and there's much that can be done. But sometimes the problem is so overwhelming that we're perplexed as to where to begin and how to start doing all the things that are necessary to do. At the Center for New Leadership, we decided that to begin, we need to have a cogent analysis of where we are, and more importantly, a greater vision of where we need to go. What should ideally this system look like? And ultimately, we thought that moving from criminal justice to human justice provided the vision, provided a new model, a new paradigm for how we should construct our work and what it is that we should be doing. And moving from criminal justice to human justice, of course, involves this deconstruction of the system that we've been talking about. And the system has been built up, it has been fed by the war on drugs. War on drugs has become the instrument, the engine that has allowed for mass incarceration here in the United States over the last 30 years. The buildup in prison, the prison population is so enormous now that it almost boggles the imagination. So as we move from criminal justice to human justice, one of the first things that I think that we need to do, one of the first things that the Center for New Leadership says that we in fact must do, is to begin to slow up the numbers of people who go into the prison system in the first place. And that procedure touches on what one of your members mentioned earlier this morning, and that is a public health approach to dealing with people who have substance abuse issues, people who have chemical dependency. They should be treated in a hospital. They should be treated somewhere where the course and the nature of their addiction is dealt with beyond punishment. We've already decided, we've already determined, all of the data reveals that punishment is not a cure. Punishment is not a healing process for people who are ill, for people who are sick. So we start by developing a public health approach to the system that would stem the flow of people going into the system, and at the same time provide adequate treatment for those who need it. In addition to the public health approach, there needs to be something that takes place in prison that creates a person who's in better shape, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, when they leave prison than when they went in. And if that doesn't happen, then there is a failing within the system. All of the data tells us that people who leave prison return back. 1/3 of the people who leave prison return back within the first year. And within 3 years, 2/3 of the people who leave prison return back. So we're talking about a system that has 30% failure rate in the first year and a 60% failure rate after 3 years. Common sense should dictate. Common sense should tell us that a system that is failing at a 66% rate after 3 years, at a 30% rate after 1 year, certainly is not a system that we need to pour more resources into. Certainly isn't a system that we need to grow. Certainly isn't a system that needs to be enhanced and made larger, but in fact it's a system that needs to be deconstructed. Can you imagine any product in the United States, anywhere? Imagine if General Motors cars had a 30% failure rate in the first year. 30% of the cars that rolled off the assembly line broke down in the first year. And within 3 years, 2/3 of all the cars that came off the assembly line didn't work. What would we do? Well, the first thing we do is the chairman of the board and the president will get fired. We get rid of the board. We reconstruct the entire company, scrap the whole thing, and obviously start all over again. And it seems to us that that is one of the things that needs to happen to this prison industrial complex. We've got to dismantle it. More importantly, we've got to think about, in the process of dismantling it, what do we replace it with? How do we create alternative systems, alternative structures that move us from where we are to some other larger point, to some other greater point? And herein lies our idea about the move from criminal justice to human justice. And for us, human justice is defined as the combination of human rights, particularly human rights as spelled out in the Declaration of Human Rights that was issued by the United Nations, I think, in 1948, and particularly Section 26 and 27, as I recall, of that Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And that's the section where the United Nations claims that having adequate food and decent shelter and education and the right to a job are fundamental and universal rights that all people should enjoy. So we start from the foundation of human rights, and on top of human rights, we build on that what we call human development. And human development certainly is an area of study that has been enlarged over the last few years. It involves all of the things that are necessary for the wholeness of life and for people to lead productive, well-meaning, well-rounded lives. All are included in human development. The resources that are necessary, the education, the training that are necessary for people to enjoy life to its fullest, and in the process achieve their highest possible potential. So human development merged with human rights ultimately, from our perspective, creates human justice. And as a model, we believe that that human justice model needs to now be applied to this prison industrial complex, this criminal punishment system. And if we can apply it to the system, we will, in the process, have in fact changed that system from what it is now to move it to a higher place, to a more productive place, to a better place. We think that this work, this transformative work, and I say we, I'm talking about the Center for New Leadership, we think that this transformative work has to be achieved on three levels simultaneously. And Charlie mentioned them very briefly, but I'd like to go into a little greater detail. Almost always within the criminal punishment system, we've identified people who the system says are broken. They have serious deficits. And the system purports to address those deficits in the so-called process of rehabilitation. So you didn't complete high school. We're going to try to help you complete high school. Or you have a substance abuse issue. We're going to try to help you deal with your substance abuse issue. You have a propensity for violence. We're going to put you in some anti-violence training program. And the focus of the current system is exclusively on repairing the individual. And that focus assumes that the individual exists in a vacuum outside of and apart from his or her environment, the environment in which they live, the environment in which they will return to once they leave prison. And while the entire focus has been on the individual, there's been very little focus on that environment. We have a model that we call the social tuberculosis model. Some of you may have heard it before. And the social tuberculosis model looks at the criminal justice system from a public health perspective. It says, in a public health context, how do we deal with problems? Well, the first thing is, let us say that crime and drugs and violence and poverty are akin to a social tuberculosis. As the people who study epidemiology would say, the first step is to identify where the problem is. Where is the disease? And we've identified where the disease is. We've said that there are 7 communities, now 10, but at the time 7 communities in New York City that account for 3/4 of all the people in the prison system. 7 neighborhoods, right? So we know where the problem is, and we know what the problem is. And the solution to the social tuberculosis, because these are infected areas, not the entire area, and not everybody that lives in the area gets infected. Some people have a stronger immune system than others. Some people just feel luckier than others. For whatever reasons, there's only a particular segment of the community that is becoming infected. So how do we deal with the infection? We subtract the people from the community, and we send them upstate to a sanitarium. We call those sanitariums prisons. And we send them to the sanitarium, for a period of time that we feel is sufficient to cure the disease. 2 to 5, 3 to 6, 10 to 20, whatever we believe is appropriate. And once we think that the disease has been cured, what do? We return that person back to the infected community, to the infected area. And you know what happens? Within 1 year, 30% of them get reinfected. Within 3 years, 60% of them get reinfected. And we just do the process all over again. We send them back. And all of that back and forth, no one has ever stopped to say, maybe it's not the individual alone, because certainly the individual bears some responsibility. But maybe we need to take a look at the infected area and perhaps concurrently with treatment to the individual, provide some treatment, provide some healing, provide some resources, provide some attention to the infected area. Thank you. And if we don't, Einstein said the test of insanity is to continue doing the same thing over again and expect a different result. And that's exactly what we're doing with this criminal justice system, although we don't recognize the insanity of it. So we say at the Center for New Leadership that in order to begin curing the infection, we have to do it on 3 levels simultaneously. And you can start anywhere. We start with system reform. And that system reform takes the nature of responsibility. Somebody mentioned holding the state responsible, accountability, and transparency. We need to understand what the state is doing thoroughly. Shouldn't be any secrets. Shouldn't be any policy, any program, any practice It's not available to us for research, for documentation, for best practice, for analysis. It should be an open book. We should be able to look at that system and determine who is accountable for what. We haven't been able to do that. So we need to have system accountability. At the same time, we need to have individual transformation. We do have to spend time working with individuals. We do have to deal with individual infirmities. We do have to provide all of the things for people that they need in order to achieve their what? Highest potential, in order to realize a process of human development, in order, as they say in the commercials, in order for them to be all that they can be. We need to focus on individual transformation. And at the same time, we need to connect the individual and the system, the institutions that undergird the system. When we talk about system accountability, we're really talking about accountability in institutions that uphold and sustain the system. And we need to focus system accountability and individual transformation at the community level. We need to empower communities so that they can begin to do the healing work that's necessary in order to both make system change and at the same time individual transformation. So individual transformation, community empowerment, and system accountabilities are the pillars upon which all of our work is focused. And out of that work, we think will come a system that is focused on human justice, the end goal, the new paradigm, the new model. In order to achieve that human justice, we think that it will take a concerted effort. It will take a coalition of several forces, some unexpected allies, certainly all the usual suspects, all the friends and the families of men and women who were formerly incarcerated, who are currently incarcerated, but others, and particularly the faith-based community. We think that there is an important and integral role for the faith-based communities. One of the things that I think, and this is my personal experience, has been missing from the analysis and the prescription for change within the criminal punishment system has been the spiritual dimension. Has been a system that's devoid of spirit is a system, as far as I'm concerned, that is dead and about to be buried. So we have to infuse the system with some sense of spirituality, some sense of morality, some fundamental ethics, some ground rules that we all agree, and that provides the sustenance for the development of human justice. It provides the analysis for us to move from where we are to some other higher ground. Center for New Leadership has, over the years, developed many programs that have been moving in that direction, even though at the time we didn't really realize it. We just very recently come to the idea, we very recently developed the idea around this human justice model. But much of our work over the years has been moving toward that model. And as we look back, as we retrospect, we realized that that was in fact where we were going. We just started a new program, and I'm going to kind of, is this my timer here? I got about 5 minutes. I'm a wow. I'm a radio talk show host, you know, we never stop talking. So we've developed this new model. Not a new model, it's just a new program. It's called Project Renew. Up until we developed Project Renew, our center didn't do social services. We didn't provide any direct client-based services. We did research, we did advocacy, we did training, but no services. And that was one of the big knocks on us. You know, people coming out of prison saying, I don't need research, I need a job. You know, I mean, it's great you're advocating for us, but I need somewhere to live. And you don't do that? Well, what the hell good are you? Matter of fact, what the hell are you doing anyway? And we try to explain that research undergirds policy. We do public policy. Brother said, man, I can't eat public policy. I need something a little bit more tangible. And for a long time, we would say, well, we'll do some referrals. We'll send you to a place where you can get a job, get housing, you know, get all the things that you need. But it wasn't working. So we decided that we would do some direct service provision. And we created Project Renew. Project Renew is a project by which we help people who are formerly incarcerated acquire their rap sheets, the record of their arrests and convictions, and do what we call rap sheet reviews that identifies problems in the rap sheet and corrects them. And we do all of that in an effort towards allowing a person to receive what here in New York is called a certificate of rehabilitation. And the certificate of rehabilitation confers on a person the idea that the state recognizes that they have made some significant changes. It looks like, you know, at the old Apollo Theater, they got that hook, and they kind of, all right, I'm leaving. So, the Project Renew allows folks to get the certificate of rehabilitation, and that provides the basis now for them. That relieves the disability that they have, the stigma of having a criminal conviction. And that allows them to become eligible for licensing, for jobs, for housing, that the conviction otherwise would bar. I've got a lot more I want to say, but I'm a little afraid that if I keep going, it may be disastrous. So let me say this. Tuesday, thank you very much for listening. Saturday morning, 11 o'clock, on the count, our radio show, WBAI 99.5 FM. Tune in, tell your friends, listen and learn. Thank you all so very much.